Hey there, this is your teacher, Mr. H, and you're watching History in a Hoodie. Today's episode is about the branches of government, where we will learn about how Georgia's government is set up. I can't wait to find out, so let's get this show started. What are we learning about today? The standard for today's lesson asks the students to analyze the role of the executive branch in Georgia state government, including the qualifications and roles for governor and lieutenant governor. Then we will analyze the role of the legislative branch in Georgia state government, including the qualifications and roles for members of the General Assembly. Finally, we will analyze the role of the judicial branch in Georgia state government, including the selection of judges, the purpose of the judicial branch, and the difference between criminal and civil law. Before we start, let's go over some vocabulary for today's lesson. An agency is an organization responsible for executing the laws or administering specific programs. Qualifications are what makes a person eligible for office. Bicameral means having two branches or chambers. A committee is a group of people chosen for a specific function from a larger group. To appeal means to apply to a higher court for a reversal of the decision of a lower court. Criminal law is law concerned with the punishment of those who commit crimes. Civil law is law concerned with the private relations between members of a community. Jurisdiction means the official power to make legal decisions and judgments. The Georgia State Constitution sets up the roles and responsibilities of our state government. Fortunately for us, Georgia's leaders created a government system very similar to the federal government system. We have three branches also: executive, legislative, and judicial, and each branch performs very similar tasks as they do in the federal government. In the federal executive branch, the president and vice president are in charge. For Georgia's executive branch, those roles become the governor and the lieutenant governor. Presently, Georgia's governor is Brian Kemp, and the lieutenant governor is Jeff Duncan. They were both elected to 4-year terms starting in 2018. To become governor or lieutenant governor, there are some qualifications. You must be at least 30 years old, a resident of Georgia for 6 years, and a U.S. citizen for 15 years. Georgia governors are term limited, which means that they can only be elected twice. The job of the executive branch is to enforce the laws. Governor Kemp and Lieutenant Governor Duncan cannot enforce all of the laws by themselves. So the executive branch also operates more than a dozen offices and agencies. This includes law enforcement officers like the GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, kind of like the FBI, and the Georgia National Guard. But it also includes other agencies like the Department of Education, who oversees all public schools, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, which hands out fishing and hunting permits. One state agency you'll all be looking forward to visiting very shortly is the Georgia Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, who provides driver's licenses and permits. The federal legislative branch is Congress, which is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate, a bicameral legislature. The same is for our state legislature, which is called the Georgia General Assembly, and is made up of the Georgia State House of Representatives and the Georgia State Senate. The purpose of the 180 members of the State House and 56 members of the State Senate is to write and pass laws. And for the most part, those laws are in 3 categories: things citizens can and can't do, what to spend the government's money on, and how to collect taxes. To become a state rep or a state senator, there are also qualifications on age: 25 for Senate, 21 for House, residency, 2 years in Georgia for both, and citizenship, must be a U.S. citizen. Both state senators and reps serve 2-year terms, but they can be elected as many times as they win. Probably my favorite YouTube clip of all time is the Schoolhouse Rock video, "I'm Just a Bill." I promise I'm not going to start singing, but that video explains perfectly what it takes for the legislature to pass a law. A bill is a proposed law. It can be written up by pretty much anyone, but it takes support from a representative or senator for it to be considered. Because thousands of bills get proposed every year, the General Assembly doesn't vote on every one right away. Instead, committees read them for consideration. A committee is a small group of leaders that focus on a topic of laws, like the Committee on Education or the Committee on Transportation. If a law is voted positively in a committee, then it will be voted on for the full House of Representatives. A law must receive a majority of votes in the House, 51%, and then it will be sent to the Senate. Now, the Senate and House must pass exactly the same bill, word for word. So, if the Senate committee wants to change even a little bit, everything must start over. But, let's say the House committee voted in favor, then the full House voted in favor, then the Senate committee voted in favor, then the full Senate also voted in favor, then and only then would the bill be sent to the governor's office. The governor has the opportunity to sign the bill into a law, or he could veto it and the whole process would start over. Gosh! Finally, the federal judicial branch is the Supreme Court, of course, but also some other courts you've probably never heard of: federal appellate courts and federal district courts. The Georgia judicial branch is similarly set up with a few extras. We have a Georgia Supreme Court, Georgia Courts of Appeals, and Georgia Trial Courts. Judges can be selected for courts in one of two ways: election or appointment. For the federal courts, all judges are appointed by the president. However, a major difference in Georgia is that many, not all, judges are elected instead. If you think of the court system from the perspective of a criminal, when the police catch you and you're in jail, you're going to have your day in court to answer for your crime. The first court you visit depends on where you broke a law and which law you broke. This is called jurisdiction, or the right to the first trial. If you broke a federal law, like terrorism, then you'll start in a federal district court for the first trial. If you broke a Georgia law, like driving while texting, then you'll start in a Georgia trial court. Let's say you participated all the way through your first trial, were declared guilty and sentenced, but you know you didn't do the crime. You would have the opportunity to appeal, which means you get another trial with a different judge. This would happen in one of the courts of appeals. You get a whole new trial, and this judge and jury would tell you that you're guilty again. Still don't like it? Well, the Supreme Court exists for this purpose, to make a final judgment on you, but also on the law itself. The U.S. Supreme Court will look at the law and the U.S. Constitution to see if there's something wrong there. So will the Georgia Supreme Court look at the Georgia law and the Georgia Constitution. As if that weren't enough for the court system to deal with, judges also have to hear complaints between people, not just lawbreakers. When a person breaks a law, they're dealing with criminal law, and these cases can result in serious fines, prison time, and sometimes even the death penalty. Yep, Georgia has the death penalty. On the other side, civil law, also known as civil suits or lawsuits, deal with the relationships between two individuals and can result in monetary compensation for misdeeds against your neighbor. Wow, so learning about state government is really important for us to understand. I'm glad we learned it today. Are you ready for some review questions? How are laws like spending decisions made by the state government? What vote is required in the House of Representatives in order for a bill to pass? What is the purpose of state agencies like the Department of Education and the Department of Fish and Wildlife? Which type of law involves cases that deal with disputes between two or more persons or groups? Federal judges are appointed by the President of the United States. How are positions in Georgia's state courts filled? I hope all of you learned a lot from today's episode of History in a Hoodie about Georgia's government. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Just kidding, I don't care about that stuff. But do make sure you study this lesson. Bye now.